Good afternoon, everyone. Gary Gabagool here with my boy Sal, and we have our 4th of July Let Freedom Ring special on the Red Podcast.
What's going on, everybody? How you doing?
And we're starting off the podcast with an incredibly appropriate song. And coincidentally or not, a couple of people posted this on my Facebook today, but Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock playing the Star Spangled Banner. How apropos.
I mean, he was feeling it. He was feeling it.
I think if whatever we are having at our barbecues this holiday weekend, happy 241st birthday, America.
41, baby. 9 years away.
I think Jimmy had a little bit more better stuff than we did at this. We're Sal and I are drinking coffee. I don't think Jimmy was doing the same.
No, he was on something harder. Definitely on.
He was getting his creative side juice, and that's for sure. Because listen to this, it's insane. I think he's playing with his teeth right now, if I'm not mistaken.
He's just so focused. I'm watching the video, everybody. I'm sorry you can't watch the video with me. He is on it right now.
Jimmy, yeah, he's just going nuts.
Okay, I'm gonna calm you down.
But this is the Left Freedom Ring special for Sal and I. Is our 13th, I believe, podcast.
Yes, 13, number 13.
Number lucky 13. And we talked last week early about how mellow for 1 week the liberal insanity got, and unfortunately that streak stopped at 1 because this week was off the charts. So what Sal and I are going to do is, since this is a 4th of July special and we want to pay homage to the great Americans of our past that have sacrificed themselves for what we can do today, what Sal and I are doing right now.
Yeah.
Barbecue, swim by the pool, maybe at the beach. So Sal's going to kick off the whole podcast with 2 stories, and then we're going to kind of give a little addendum on where you guys can watch this, but we're going to make a synopsis of it. And if you guys haven't heard of this or seen it, it's incredibly touching, and Sal will go into it, but I recommend we all do so, because here you see just some incredible human beings.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
Let's
take it away.
We're talking about Bill Reeder and Charlie Plum. These are former Vietnam vets. But let's, even before I break down that, if you're not feeling patriotic today, if you're saying you feel like you have something like a little against America, just watch any type of news coverage from 9/11. Just any type of news coverage.
Great point.
From before 9 a.m. on 9/11, and then after 9 a.m. on 9/11. And you just feel this crazy, I don't know. I did it the other day because I was kind of like losing my feeling on why 9/11 was so bad. I mean, I lived it. I was in high school. But I was like, let me rewatch this as an adult and let me see how I feel. And I watched it, oddly enough. I was like, let me see what Howard Stern was doing during 9/11.
I was listening to that podcast.
It was unreal how he was going. He knew exactly from the jump. He's like, I bet I know who did this.
Yep.
And he called it all. And I remember just like, Howard Stern's obviously, jock comic. It's a fun radio show. Right. So you're not expecting something serious to come out of that. But that dude was in Manhattan when it went down. And the sense of just hearing him talk, I was like, all right.
Yeah.
It really brought out, like, I was like, all right, this is why we're doing what we're doing now. This is why America is where it's at right now. It's because of 9/11.
Yeah, that day, as we all know, will live in infamy. I used to work in that building back in the day, and I got out of there in 90. But that exact day of 9/11, like every other day, was just a normal day. And that day, coincidentally or not, I had a surgery at New York Downtown Hospital, which is about 4 or 5 blocks from 9/11
Trade Centers.
Yeah. And I was late. And the strange part about it is I'm never late. But I was late that day. For whatever reason, I think it was a beautiful day. It was near my birthday, so I think me and my buddies might have been out the night before, which usually I don't ever do on a work day. But For some reason I did that day, but I was late, probably about 30 minutes late. And I got to the Lincoln, and it was a normal day, just crowded, and people were getting back from their Labor Day weekend the week previously, and kind of getting back into the swing of things, because here in the Northeast, the week after Labor Day is kind of the rollout of the real world, so to speak.
It's the end of summer.
For the next 3 months until Christmas time. So everyone was getting back into the gist of it. So things were rocking in the New York, New Jersey area. And I get into the city, and I automatically went down from 34th and 10th, or 43rd and 10th, where the Lincoln Tunnel is. I got off automatically and headed downtown on the West Side Highway, and traffic backed up. And it's funny Sal mentions Howard Stern, because that's who I was listening to. Because back then there was no satellite radio.
He was like the king.
Yeah, it was kind of difficult in the morning to listen to anybody but him, because everybody pretty much sucked if you didn't want to listen to music, which I did. But in the city, a lot of times you have a very difficult time listening to, a WDHA, which is the Rock of Jersey, which I listened to. Back then, there weren't too many good rock stations. They were kind of mediocre at best. But I was listening to Howard Stern, and we were stuck in traffic on the West Side Highway. It was a really sunny, bright day. And real quick, just like Sal mentioned, it got really serious quick. And I knew right away what it was. And I actually made a U-turn when everybody else kind of stuck. It was a company car, so I didn't really give a shit. But I made a U-turn at the next entranceway, made a legal U-turn, and headed out of the city. I don't know why I did that. I just knew that.
Smartest thing you could have did. You would have been trapped.
Yeah, I knew it was a mess, and I knew who it was, because I've been studying these individuals for so long. And then I proceeded to go to my condo or townhouse in Whippany and watch this for the next 3 or 4 days, like everybody did. Didn't leave the house, because I knew a bunch of people who passed away and died on that day, and I used to work with them, and so it was very, very humbling, very enlightening. And then, like Sal mentioned, then we could talk about the special. But I remember when after the shit all settled, probably the day after George Bush made his infamous speech to the firemen and the first responders, I remember driving down the highway, and it was on Route 80. I'll never forget as long as I live. And I was in my Viper, and I had my red one, the one previous to this one, and I had a flag just like this, draping really high. And I'll never forget, I got stopped at a approach to an entranceway, and I'm not bullshitting you, heading into the city. It's probably seemed like about 10,000 bikers. They shut down the highway, so you literally, from the first bike to the last, there was a good 20-minute wait.
Wow.
And every person had flags going. And I remember it was another beautiful day, and I remember looking at this cloth and just feeling overwhelming pride. I started tearing up. I just felt this incredible inner strength about our country, even back then. And I knew that for me to look at this as just some cloth with some print on it would never be the same again.
Exactly, totally changed that day.
Incredibly changed.
And I listened to those stories. We listened to Jocko Willink. We talk about him a lot on this podcast, and what's great about him is he has all these old vets on, and he was a vet himself, so it's easy for him to get these kind of guests. But he tells amazing patriotic stories about just will to survive and freedom, and just what it is to be an American that I feel like most Americans nowadays have totally forgotten. And,
absolutely.
You hear these guys' stories of, they were in the Hanoi Hilton, a prisoner of war for 6 years, for 7 years. And they would talk about, they would get letters and postcards, but it would all be edited, and, they would never actually know what was going on.
Propaganda.
But just seeing the handwriting of their loved ones was enough to just, I got to keep going. This is why I did this. I did this for America. I did this for them. And it's just like where we are today in the state of affairs is sad, because people definitely have forgotten.
It's interesting, the physical looks of these men. These guys look like typical American grandfathers. Yeah. And you wouldn't think they were such badasses, but like everything else in life, the difference between a man of 30 or 35 or, late 20s and a man of 65, 70, it makes you think sometimes that, maybe as kids, we don't know everything. Because here we have men who look like, Bill Reeder, if you go back and look at him, he looks probably like the most grandfatherly, nice man figure you could ever find in your life. Matter of fact, if I was casting a TV show and I needed someone as an all-American grandfather, Bill Reeder would probably be the guy.
Think of Al Borland from Home Improvement.
Yeah.
Just old.
Yep.
Like that was that is this
Yeah,
man?
he's like a typical all-American father. And but the stories this man tells, where he had to march miles, and if you guys know anything about Vietnam,
Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Ho Chi Minh Trail, this guy had to walk miles with broken back
For weeks.
Broken back. He basically had, when he would sleep at night and he couldn't move his bottom half of his legs very well, so he would sleep sitting up, that he'd wake up in the middle of the night and his wounds were being eaten by rats.
Yeah. He tells, it's the story of, if you all have seen The Deer Hunter, the movie The Deer Hunter, when they're prisoners of war over there, it's sort of like that, only real.
Yeah.
His stories are real.
Yeah. And the torture.
Yeah, the torture, and how they says, those pits with the rats. And yeah, they really did put these guys in pits, 6 inches of muck.
Yep.
And
yeah, he did. That's one thing he says.
And he goes, just surviving those nights, it was a testament of sanity. Just hearing these guys' stories makes you truly feel like, wow,
right? What
should I do to become a better American? Like,
person.
These dudes really gave it all on the line. Like,
and the interesting part is the theme that Jocko always gets from these people, and it's not like he's prodding them, or it just is. I guess what you would call as survivors. I like to call them winners.
Yeah.
And I write a lot about on the Gary Gabagool Facebook page about when the human body is broken, you have nothing. That takes away a lot of a woman or a man's psyche when you can't do the physical things you used to do, and that's what happens to these men. And then even worse is that broken psyche from your physical breakdown carries over and transitions into your mental psyche, which for me, mental toughness is something that some lack. Don't know why, but I guess when you hear these men's stories, and that's Bill Reeder and Captain Charlie Plum, 2 fighter pilots. They were fighter pilots for the Phantom. They were shot down. Yeah, they were shot down. So they both were pilots. And you hear about their capture. And the one common theme amongst these men is survival. No matter how bad they were broken mentally and physically, they weren't going to give the Vietnamese what they wanted. The propaganda, the selling out of their country. They thought about their loved ones. And I just heard today on Captain Charlie Plum's testimony is that they said people coming from war on average, 30, I think, in a study done, 30.9% of all soldiers suffer from some sort of PTSD. And these are guys who just went into, not just, but went into war and saw some horrific things. Well, what they did is, I think there was 599 Vietnam vets who made it home alive. And they found out that their PTSD suffered less than 5%. And yes, how can that be? These guys were tortured. They were starved. They were beaten. Psychological propaganda given that their loved ones were dead, that their wives were moving on, things that really would break men. But they found out that their PTSD was less than 5%. Yeah. And they couldn't figure out why. And they figured out that what happened was when you're in a camp, a prisoner camp, you're with other Americans, and there's a pecking order from, the person who becomes the training camp captain, or so to speak, the leader, and down, and he gives everybody jobs and everyone to report to, and you become a kind of a well-oiled machine.
As long as you keep lines of communication,
exactly,
stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting because you sit here and you say to yourself, that's what being an American is. And even in the most horrific of circumstances, none of these men gave anything, even after they had all these atrocities done to them.
No, they would give their name, their rank. And that was
date of birth, I think.
Date of birth. That's all they would give these fuckers. And that's what they were trained to do, and that's what they did.
And they did it. And then they came home, and they all acclimated incredibly well. And Captain Charlie Plum, I won't go through it all, but he mentions that a lot of these guys became incredibly successful when they came back to America. And a lot of times you say to yourself, that doesn't happen for a lot of people that come over. They You know, these guys didn't have a pity party.
No.
A lot of them had physical injuries. You know, they were beaten so badly. Some became disabled. A couple guys in wheelchairs, but the guys in wheelchairs still became successful Americans, successful human beings.
Oh yeah, I mean, I really, today is a day to just remember every one of these guys. That, I mean, this country is only 241 years
Yep.
old. That's it. 241 years, and like other countries have been around for thousands of years, and I mean, we're the only one of the only free societies out there.
Yep.
And this is an experiment. People every day want to get rid of their freedom, and it blows my fucking mind.
It's amazing to me. In 2017, the nation that we have become, or what people, maybe I should correct that, the nation that people want us to become. I'm not saying everybody. Obviously, there's a lot of people here, and Sal and I talk about these types of people. It's only from what I see every day, but you see it on TV, and if you're going to act a certain way, I always say to these people, why don't you try to see what life is like elsewhere? Take a one-way ticket and go to the Middle East. Go to North Korea. We know what happened to the dude Otto Wumbler. He went to North Korea.
Go to fucking Canada.
Go to Canada.
Go to fucking Canada.
Go to Canada.
God.
And if you want to be a little more, go to, like, Canada's a pretty mellow place. If you want to be a little more extreme, go to Mexico. That's our border.
We weren't going to talk about this. I know this was our Let Freedom Ring podcast, but I saw this stupid fucking news the other day. Did you see that couple in Canada that's letting the baby choose the gender?
No, it doesn't shock me. It's just complete nonsense.
Guess what the mother had? The mother had a full mustache. The mother had a full.
And what did the husband look like?
I didn't see the husband. I just saw the mother, and it was enough to want me to fucking cry for this child. This poor child. And this is the thing. Like, we can call. I don't want to like call out a certain group or whatever, but you can want to call it vegan. You want to call it gender this. You want to call it this and that.
The gender neutral, as they call it.
There's nothing wrong with it, people. Do what you want to fucking do.
Right.
Do what you want to do. The problem lies when it comes to you having your children. And you're going to pass along your gender beliefs, your food beliefs, your this beliefs. That's only good for you. For you. Yep. You have to let your children blossom and become the people that they're going to be on their own. You can't force feed them your bullshit. When that happens, then you just see a whole trickle-down effect of fucking nonsense happen.
Right. Yeah, and
that's it. That's all. I was on my soapbox. Let freedom ring, baby. Happy 4th of July.
Well, we talked about the Let Freedom Ring, and to do so, we got to discuss the week of what occurred. And I'm confused on the day. I keep thinking it's Sunday, but it's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday.
But I believe on, if I'm not mistaken, Monday morning, the DIA, which is the Defense Intelligence Agency, came out with memos. Now, people, let's get this clear, especially for all my liberal brothers and sisters out there. These are memos, not from a Republican, not from a conservative, not from a government organization, and not from the newspaper. These are memos from our boy, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. And basically what the Defense Intelligence Agency said when they got their hands on them was that every single thing stated about Benghazi, and speaking of Left Freedom Ring, 4 great Americans dead over there in that foreign land, which is just like a war, but at our embassy, was a lie. Not only was it a lie starting from the get about the video, lie. About the reason it happened, lie. About all of the communication that all these men tried to reach with them, lie. From former Ambassador Stevens' communication, lie. So basically what this memo says, people, is that it was a well-coordinated, well-orchestrated effort by, I'm going to call him the Muslim, Hillary, Susan Rice, who was part of it, part of the story, and basically their entire cabinet coming up with these lies of how these men died. They said that it was planned 2 weeks in advance. And specifically, it said they wanted to strike on the anniversary of 9/11. Terrorism, people. Full-blown, no adulterated terrorism on our country, on our military, and our great special ops operators. Go.
Yeah, it's fucking unbelievable, and it's just like it's sad that surprises people. Like,
it didn't surprise me
no,
when I read it.
It's not going to surprise you. It's not going to surprise me. It's not going to surprise a lot of people that we know. But like, and it's not even surprising. A lot of people will say, "It's not true."
Well,
it's
what pisses me off, and I say this about liberals, and I hear it all the time, but how they're so easily to dismiss something like that. And two things piss me off about that. A report like this will come out, and they won't believe it. Like Sal just mentioned, they'll say it's not true. But what even bothers me more than that, which it shouldn't, because these are memos from the people that lied. What bothers me even more is when you hear the men, the boots on the ground, say they were lies. They lived it. They saw their friends killed in front of them. If Sal, those guys that we talk about, Oz Geist, Tonto Peranto, Teague Tieglin, that would be like Sal being one of those guys and me being the guy, I think his name was Rome. They were buddies. And Sal and I are over there together, and Sal turns around, I get hit with a mortar, and he sees my brains spilled all over the fucking, roof of that embassy. He goes balls crazy, starts killing people like they did. It's 4 guys versus 400, and they wipe them all out, and they somehow get out of there. Sal comes back to the States, and here's a guy who he not only fought with, he looked at as a brother, comrades in arms, brothers in arms, loved the guy, had his back, and vice versa. He hears some bullshit from a Hillary Clinton or a Barack Obama or Susan Rice saying it was all propaganda, that it was a video. And
it's so sad. And like, it wasn't just, those 4 dudes that got extracted. There was a tons of families, people in that embassy, and there's all kinds of Americans, hundreds of people.
Yep.
And they just didn't give a fuck about them. They would have let them all die.
No. And I think, and I've said this before, Sal hits on a good point. I think Hillary and Barack Obama's goal was they all were going to be killed. Now, this is a theory of mine, and I'll explain it to you people why I think this. But how is it that, listen, we all do our jobs. Sal does what he does. I do what I do. If I was ever on my job, or Sal, or is there anybody out there watching the podcast and they receive, I'm not talking, how many calls did they get? Like 600?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not talking about 600.
Amount.
I'm not talking about 600. If we even got 6 calls on our job, 6. And nobody, and here, let's make a clarification. Nobody's lives are on the line.
I mean, 2.
Yeah,
if I get 2 calls about the same thing, I'm like, all right, something's up.
Exactly. But I'm just being kind.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
And I'm saying 6, but no one's lives are even being on the line. Sal might lose an account. That means a lot to his boss. I may do the same to my company. But here we are, is that 600 times the men who are in, dire need of help. They're under incredible fire from the enemy, who are basically rip down the American flag and hang the black flag of ISIS, which is a hideous sight to see that in an embassy, American embassy at that.
Yeah.
And nothing.
I mean, this is what you can argue is that, I'll play devil's advocate, but I'll play devil's advocate the good way. Barack Obama and Hillary aren't the terrorists, but they definitely created the terrorists, because what they did is they created the vacuums in all these places. They had, and I'm not going to say that Iran and Syria and Libya and Egypt, the people with all these crazy dictatorships, and Iraq and all. I'm not saying that the dictatorships are good and that they're doing good by the people, but it's stable. It's stable over there when you have these crazy dictators. When you don't, look up the caliphate, the ISIS caliphate map. Look at it. Look how big it is, people. Everyone thought it was a joke when these guys said they were going to take over the world. Look how much fucking land they have.
Yeah.
It's not a fucking joke anymore.
Nope.
They fucking got almost half the goddamn world over there, and they're just keep on pushing.
Yep.
And they're not going to stop until they get it all. And the sad part is, everyone's allowing them in, except for us now. Thank God. God, that travel ban went into effect.
And
let freedom ring.
And my theory on how Barack Obama and Hillary wanted them all to die is based on this, and I think it makes a lot of sense. How is it that when those 4 great Americans, or 3 actually, great Americans, got all of these people from the embassy out. They made it to the airport. There was no American plane there waiting for them. They had to get
a charter.
They had to get a Libyan billionaire or very wealthy multimillionaire who was a friend to America to take them home.
Didn't he have to fly them to another country first?
Yeah, I think exactly. I think they might have flown to Ramstein, which is Germany or whatever, because these guys with their limbs cut hanging off, these guys were shot up. But that just goes to show you. But to build upon what Sal just said, to build upon, and just what you just mentioned, is you're absolutely dead on correct. You couldn't have said it any better.
Power vacuums. And
absolutely. Power vacuums, ISIS, all these things that have gone on. They created it. Created. Not only have they created it, it's been getting stronger. I mean, in this part of this memo to the Benghazi report was, Barack Obama calling ISIS the JV team. The guy didn't know what that, either he was sly like a fox, and he knew exactly what was going on, and he was planning and orchestrating it, or he was as dumb as a piece of shit could be.
He's dumb as a piece of shit could be, because I love watching when I love when people think something's going to happen and something entirely else happens, and then you get to go back and watch. Happened with the election.
Oh yeah.
What's great about that is you can really go back now. Not even, and it's great because you don't have to go back that far in history. 6 months, a year and a half, to all these people bashing Trump, bashing everything about it, and rightfully so on their part.
They're still doing it.
Go for it. I mean, that was before this guy was American Idol, whatever the fuck he was doing. I don't even know. Fucking whatever. And then and then you see Barack Obama at the correspondence dinner. I watched that several times.
Yeah, I watched it 2 days ago, actually.
And it's funny because he has the room in stitches, and except for one person, Donald Trump, who is smirking, and you could just see the cold calculatedness behind the guy. This guy, he thinks he's real funny. He thinks he's real funny now. He thinks he's real funny now. And what's the tale about revenge? It's best served cold.
Yeah. and the crazy part is, think about that. Let's think about in life. And I wouldn't call Donald Trump and President Obama nemesis. Isn't like an enemy, but it's a guy who's a bit arrogant. He's the kind of guy who walks around, maybe your job, of course on a lower level, but walks around your job, or a guy you maybe, or a woman that you're not acquaintances with them, but you know them from high school, and they think they have a little bit more than you, or whatever the case may be. You might have the rooster feathers up. Think about this. You had a guy on a national spectacle, a national stage, do that to a proud man like Donald J. Trump. And not only did he do it, he gloated, he spit in the face, and he laughed at Donald J. Trump.
Yeah, it was bad. I mean, if you watch it, it's it's
and listen, he didn't just do it once. He doubled and tripled down. He went on Jimmy Fallon, I think I'm sorry, not Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel. And he read one of Donald Trump's tweets, and he did it like he was cool, like he had a phone, and just like Sal mentioned, everybody was laughing their asses off. And he said something along the lines of, Donald Trump said he's the worst president of all time, and Barack Obama in this black,
at least I am
in this black room, say, at least I'm a president, one you'll never be, or something along those lines.
I remember that.
And he dropped the phone like a mic drop.
Yeah, I remember watching that. Was right before the election.
Yeah. And think about how great it is.
That's forever. We get to see that forever.
And not only did Donald Trump prove him wrong, Donald Trump made him look like an asshole. And Donald Trump has done more since early February up until July the 4th than Barack Obama did in 8 solid years in this office. He basically dogged it. He milked it. Didn't do shit. Didn't even work. He was the prototypical lazy bum.
Yeah. Well, you see him trying to do his whole shadow thing right now, shadow
exactly.
Government. But it's not going to work.
No.
It's not going to work. You're going to be shadow government to the fucking global nations.
That's it.
And then when it comes down to something serious, like anybody with power, they're like, who the fuck are you?
Yeah. And President Trump gets zero respect from. If any other human being did what he did, say it was done in sports, they'd make that guy a hero.
Yeah.
Say it was done in music, same thing.
Yeah.
Except since it's a conservative and Donald J. Trump does it, they don't even give him. I mean, he made every single person on CNN, CNBC, every news, God bless you, every news organization look like fucking fools.
Yeah.
Flat out fools.
People are like, why does he tweet? Why doesn't he stop his Twitter? Well, he doesn't stop tweeting. He doesn't stop his Twitter because it's his only real direct message to us.
Right. It don't bother me at all.
He's not going to stop speaking directly to his people.
No.
That's what you, and when I hear that, I'm like, why do you want him to stop speaking directly to his people? Why do you want it to be edited? Why do you want it to be, covered up?
Changed.
Yeah. Because that's what's going to happen.
And speaking of, this is a perfect segue real quick. And we mentioned it on last week's Red podcast, but we're just going to gloss over again because a couple other funny things came up of the Project Veritas videos. And we mentioned the one last week about Jim Vonnefield from CNN, but we also got one from Van Jones.
That was great. That one was great.
Now, people, if you don't know who Van Jones
is. Van Jones is a fucking piece of shit.
Yeah, Van Jones is he was a Black Lives Matter guy, big proponent. And he basically came on video and said that CNN was lying. And it was just funny because, the night that President Trump was elected, he called it the saddest day in American history. And so now he's sitting here admitting on video where he was being filmed that everything he says is a lie and there's nothing really there. So that was interesting.
How can you lie when you don't know you're being recorded?
Exactly.
So you're just a liar all the time, dude?
Yeah.
So why are you on TV?
Yeah, he's lying. He lied about saying that, Trump was this and,
so
Russia was that.
He basically sewed his job up. He's done.
Yeah, but he may keep it though, because that works.
Yeah, but that network's done.
Yeah, that network's done. But that was interesting. And then that there's other videos that came out that I'm gonna tell you something. James O'Keefe does a phenomenal job, and I'm gonna tell you something. Political correctness is not one of them. Thank the Lord.
Yeah.
He just comes right out and he bashes people over the head. And I mean, I don't know how he does it, but these videos showing these people basically, I think another video had somebody from the DNC calling, calling voters dumb pieces of shit or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they kind of came right out and said it. It was quite interesting. And like I said, though, nothing surprises me. But here's what bothers me is you still, after all of that, you still will get liberals who will not believe. And this week at the coffee shop, my annual, run, to the coffee shop, I ran into a lot of people like this week, a lot. And I try so hard to crawl into people's brains. And honestly, like we talk, Sal and I've been saying this from, day one, is we're not looking to change people's minds. I mean, we're not going to. I have this personal feeling that 20 to 25% of people will never change no matter what.
Without a doubt.
No matter what.
Nothing you do,
nothing,
say, or show them.
They're brainwashed drones who have a mind as closed as a coffin on a dead person.
Yeah. Literally have to be told everything.
Yeah.
So it's the only way they can survive.
Yeah, they're never going to be, they'll never believe anything. And then you have, I would say on the right hand side, I wouldn't say 25 or 30, I'd say more like 10, where you may have the Bible thumpers who, believe what they believe in. And then you have everybody else in the middle, and we all have our center left, center rights, and then independents, and then, our staunch conservatives. And I do think there's a lot more crazy liberals than there used to be.
I don't know. For me, though, it always goes deeper. There's intrinsic truth in the world, and you fucking know it. And if you don't know it, you're a goddamn idiot.
Yeah.
So, that's it. And that's not even common sense. There's just truths about the world. Good defeats evil.
Yep.
Just shit like that. And to these liberal people, they don't have it. It's what gets me. I'm like, oh man, you are just so far off base.
I think it's like we talk about the utopian society, which makes zero sense. It doesn't. I can't even go into, because usually what I try to do is look, step into someone else's shoes. But I kind of look at someone like that who's maybe been brainwashed for so long. But I look at it as they're simpletons. And people, the one thing I'm not saying is, listen to me. I'm not saying liberals are unintelligent, because they may have good jobs and they may have to do things in their particular field incredibly well. But what I'm saying is they have zero maximum sense. Their mind is as closed as can be, which makes you a dangerous person, because you're not open to dialogue, you're not open to communication, and you're not open to free thinking. And we've talked about this before, Sal and I.
What I call this, I've been really harping on it all week now, is emotional intelligence.
Yep.
They have the emotional intelligence of fucking 2-year-olds. Like,
yep.
Any little thing that doesn't go their way, any little thing that they don't like, they have to throw a temper tantrum. And it's just, that's not the way to do good business. That's not the way to be a good person. That's not the way to do good in your life. So it's obvious. It's fucking obvious. You knew this when you went to elementary school. Like, oh, I can't throw temper tantrums anymore. People won't be my friend. What changed? What the fuck changed? You grew up and now you can throw a temper tantrum and people like you? No,
I think what changed is they hung out with other people who throw temper tantrums, unfortunately, and they stay away, and they have no friends outside of their little world. How could you? Just like Sam, how could you? We talked about this many times. Who wants to be around negative, whiny, snowflake, as they're called, people? Like little bit, like for a man, mangina little bitches.
You can't handle life. You can't handle truth. You can't handle anything. What the fuck is? What happened? Like, what made people like this?
It's, and I don't know. I guess maybe some you see it going a lot around. We talk about colleges a lot. Yeah. I just don't get it. It's hard for me to fathom how people got like this, and also the way everyone just marches to these groups of individuals that march to the beat of what drum is playing that they listen to, like a CNN or a CNBC. Because people, you don't know how many times I debate people. It happened to me this morning. My wife was coming back from the shore, being with some friends, and I went to the coffee shop to get some work done on 4th of July, and 2 liberals were there, and we just had a debate. And they know I'm a conservative. They know I voted for Trump, and I could see they were kind of goading me a little bit. And it was funny because when the conversation started, there was 3 or 4 of us, because where I go, there's a big center table, and then there's tables or chairs all over.
Okay.
But it got into it where they asked me about what President Trump has done, and some other ancillary questions about the administration, about anything about him. And it was interesting to watch where, listen, I'm not bragging, it just is fact. I intellectually beat the shit out of them, where to the point where everybody started coming off their table and listening. It was actually kind of cool.
That's awesome.
So it was, the owner came out, another guy who was sitting came out, and then it just became like where there was 3 or 4 of us, now became like the whole coffee shop. Not everybody, but probably around 12, 14 people came around, and they were listening to us debate. And a couple people said, and I didn't even know them, so I found this to be great, was they said to the 2 guys I was debating with, well, you can't use that as an argument. You're just giving, information like it's bad. Like this guy here
he spoke to Russia.
Right. This guy here in the blue shirt.
That's not bad.
This guy here in the blue shirt gave specific examples of accomplishments he had and things he's done. And then, I could see these 2 gentlemen getting very flustered, and I was waiting.
Yeah. Usually, what happens when you're flustered. It happens.
Well, it's funny.
Then the emotional intelligence.
Exactly.
I don't like you.
The only thing I could equate it to, and this is gonna, for some, now listen, I want to be sexist, but some of you women, you might not find this funny, but I know the guys are gonna love this one. Maybe some women too. The only thing I could equate it to is when a running back is at like the 40, and he breaks through the line, and he's got a free touchdown to the end zone, and he's got like 6 yards to go, and out of nowhere some safety comes, and as they meet, he's in the goal, and you're waiting for that referee just to go boop, and
throw the
flag, and that's what I was waiting for. And the flag in this conversation was, I thought they were going to call me a racist.
It's good. That's usually a card they pull out.
But they did in a weird way, but they also kind of put a spin on it. I mentioned this earlier in the week, is they called me a white supremacist, which makes me different from a racist, I think. I guess it's the same thing, but now they're just using a different code word, which liberals always do. And they were kind of saying that Trump supporters were white supremacists.
And what about all his non-white white people that voted for him.
And that was my next question. I said, what do you call the African Americans or the Hispanics or the Asian population or the Indian population or whatever minority group voted for him? What do you call them? Do you call them white supremacists too? Because if you do that, you're a fucking idiot. That makes zero sense.
Yeah.
Literally, it's the dumbest argument ever.
That's not the word for that.
No, it doesn't.
So what did they say?
So they kind of changed that really quick, and then another, and they just kind of said that I always try to make it not about. They were trying to say I was. They called it spinning it, and not answering the question about President Trump. I said I did answer it. He's not those things you just mentioned. And then they kind of said something along the lines about the KKK, and I said, all right, let me ask you a question. When was the last thing that the KKK did anything of prominence?
You know how many fucking KKK members there are?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like 2,500 in the whole world. There's fucking non-existent.
And they have, and the things they did back in the day were horrible.
Yeah, that was back then when they had a following. There's no following
like
now.
The late 20s, 30s, 40s, maybe some of the 50s. But that was really it.
You know what the KKK is?
Yeah,
North Dakota.
Yeah.
Montana. Yeah. These fucking people aren't. They're in the middle of nowhere.
Well, back in the day, it was started by the Democrats.
Yeah, it was
in the South.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, one of them is Hillary Clinton's mentors. He died obviously, but she made a rip-roaring speech about how great he was, and he was one of the grand wizards of the KKK. So that goes to tell you that. But
I can see you. I can see Hillary wearing the garb.
Oh, of course she has. And
I can see her wearing that red one, the head one.
Yes, the head one. That she probably does in hiding. Yeah. And then another question that, like Sal mentioned, that we asked about the non-white people that voted for Trump, but I asked them, all right, so you're talking big about the KKK, nothing's going on. They said, oh yes it is, and then they kind of transitioned to Black Lives Matter and says the cops are the real racist. I said, wait a second, now you're making a leap from KKK to the cops. How is that even remotely accurate? And they said some bullshit about that. I said, well, how come the group that you support, these Antifa punks, the ones who are supposedly anti-fascist, but in all actuality are as fascists can be? They are just fascists. Yeah. How come they're the ones wearing the black hoods and committing crimes?
Fascists.
Exactly. Committing crimes in 2017. Matter of fact, just last week, committing crimes that they say the supposed KKK are doing. And so, that kind of threw them off their game because they had no answer for that.
Did I tell you the story about the officer trying to sue Black Lives Matter in Louisiana? Did I tell you that story?
No, go ahead.
Black Lives Matter held a rally down in Louisiana, and of course it got violent, and a couple of police officers got injured. One police officer really got fucked up, and he's trying to sue.
Was he African American?
Can't remember.
Oh, okay.
I think he might have been.
Yeah, I thought he was.
It's null and void.
Yeah, it is.
He got fucked up. He's trying to sue them. It turns out, people, if you didn't know this, Black Lives Matter isn't an actual activist group, so you can't sue them. They're not an actual organization. It's categorized by our U.S. government that Black Lives Matter is no more than like an idea. So there's no one to sue. So you could sue people civilly if you fucking know their names, but you can't actually sue the group. And this is right then and there. Anytime I feel like a Black Lives Matter thing is going to go down, people should really just fucking shut it down immediately. Yeah. Like immediately. I'll even call for violence on that if it has to.
Yeah.
Just fucking shut these pieces of shit haters down.
Yep.
They want nothing more than to create more racism and create reverse oppression is their main goal. If you actually look at their fucking bylaws and shit, they're trying to reverse oppress, which is, we all know, is goddamn ridiculous.
Right.
And slavery was wrong and it was fucked up. And listen, white people feel bad for it. It doesn't mean you go reverse oppress and like now white people have to be the slaves. No, you move on, you grow as a group of people. Like that was a fucked up period. Let's never do that again. Well, that's what you learn from.
Yeah, well, we talked about it before. None of our ancestors here.
We didn't fucking take your goddamn people slaves.
No. And to be honest with you, if you really want to do your homework and find out the true iconoclast issues that came up with slavery is, unfortunately, I know you people don't want to hear this, but slaves were sold to America by other Africans.
By other fucking slave masters.
So
African slave masters.
Black African slave masters or people who want to be wealthy over there sold their own people, which is, if you think about it, people, is not much different than every other class of people in the world. in Italy.
It's horrible.
The Northern
fucking
Italians
horrible. Yeah.
enslaved my ancestors in the South. It's happened everywhere, but it is what it is. And when we came here and blacks were the slaves,
Yeah, so to go and shut down a highway in
Yeah.
2017 and stop people from getting to hospitals and children getting their fucking medicine and hurting police officers and hurting people and not being able to fucking get any kind of repercussion, reward, anything from it it's to me, it's, I don't know how I would say
it's a crime.
I see people in New Jersey with the Black Lives Matter fucking bumper sticker, and I swear to God, like I don't get violent, I don't do nothing, but I just, if I have the opportunity to ask them a question, if not, I will definitely give you a death stare from my fucking car as I'm driving by because you are the problem.
Yep. That's
right, I'm off my soapbox now. Let freedom ring.
It's true. And then and on I had to address this because I think it's critically important to see how the liberal mindset works. We know how it works, but to see it in action, live and in person, is really quite scary. And for rational, normal thinking, intelligent adults, which I think most of us on here are, to kind of get into that mindset is quite a scary thing. Because, for example, this week there's been a lot of stuff on radical Islam and just the craziness of what's going on.
Fucking insane.
It's not like it's anything different than it has been, but I think at the end of Ramadan, which just ended, they ramped up quite a lot in the end of June.
Yeah.
That's the end of their, and that was their goal. And you saw some horrific things, but there was something I mentioned on Facebook, and I won't mention this woman's name. She's actually not a friend of mine, but she just happened to get on my post, and I think it was from the Red Podcast maybe, and she basically told me that I was a racist for mentioning radical Islam, and there is no such thing as Muslim, radical Muslim terrorists. That
Really?
It's no different than Timothy McVeigh, and I was waiting for that because that's their go-to.
That's the fucking card.
30 years ago, they're still going to this fucking guy.
Out.
I think it was 27 years ago. They're still going back to Timothy McVeigh. But the funny thing is, they'll say Timothy McVeigh, and then I come back with, what about Bernadette Doran and Bill Ayers? And they don't know who he is. I'm like, well, you supported, you're against Timothy McVeigh, but, and he wasn't a conservative. He was a nut.
He was just a fucking wacko.
He was a wacko. But these people will say they don't know who Bernadette Doran and Bill Ayers are, but basically they're two people in the late 60s, early 70s that did the exact same thing as Timothy McVeigh, except their agenda was as a radical. This wasn't their first time they did it. Timothy McVeigh did it once, and he got caught. If I'm not mistaken, he got sentenced to death.
Yeah.
So he got what he deserved.
No,
McVeigh died.
His accomplice got sentenced to death.
Okay. Sorry. There you go. And then, thanks for squaring that away. Mm-hmm. And then Bill Ayers and Bernadette Doran to this day are still alive, but they've done a lot of really bad stuff, anti-American stuff, and just happens to be they're from Chicago. They're also buddies with Barack Obama, and both of them are on quite a few board of directors for liberal groups in this country. So it doesn't seem to bother them then when they mention Timothy McVeigh that they don't mention the other two.
It's fucking terrorism, people. And there's always going to be those crazy outliers that you can't stop. But we know the problem. It's not like fucking back in the day when we had Nazis. We fucking, all right, we're going to Germany. We're going to punch a Nazi in the face. Our enemy is widespread.
Oh, yeah.
It's fucking out there. Yeah. And there's way more of them than there were Nazis. So,
yeah. And the video I saw, I don't have the people's names. It was sent to me, and it was quite disturbing. And if you want, sometimes I think people that nobody wants to hear about this stuff or nobody wants to watch it. And, from the post, sometimes I get people saying, oh, it's too depressing for me to listen to or to watch. And I get it. However, I don't think you understand the scope of the problem until you see how crazed, how evil, how vile, how hatred a group like this can be. And the reason I'm mentioning this is in Egypt, there was a man and woman doing a TV show. And basically what happened was they started crying both of them, on the air. And it was shocking for me to watch a Muslim man cry, because you usually don't see that. They're pretty proud men. But what happened was there was this Egyptian woman who tried to rescue a group of people called the Yazidi. And the Yazidi is a non-Muslim, pro-Christian group in Syria. And they've been targeted, searched out, and hunted by ISIS. And so there's two stories that this woman tells, and she happened to rescue the ones that didn't die. And what she tells the story about is two stories in particular, and they need to be told. And they were in Egyptian, or they were in Arabic, and had subtitles. And so when people tell me, like, hey, Gary Gabagool, you're full of shit, you know, this is your interpretation, or, you know, all those videos you watch on air that you see all this craziness, it's all media propaganda that's done by the right, edited. Yeah. Here's a case where you have two people of Arabic, Egyptian ancestry who are talking in a language that we don't understand, obviously. A show that took place quite a while, you know, a bunch of miles away. And they're basically saying that in one episode, one horrific atrocity, a woman was captured with her husband was murdered in front of her. She had a 1-year-old baby, and the baby was taken away from her. And she was raped repeatedly over 3 days. After being raped for 3 days, they threw her in a cage, and they didn't give her food, not a stitch of food or water, I believe, for 5 days. Now, people, I don't give a shit what you think about how tough you may be, or how whatever. You don't eat for 5 days or drink an ounce of water,
you're done.
You're done. You're pretty much out of your mind. If you're not dead, you're very close to it, and you probably are barely scratching the surface. So on the last day, you know, these guards came in and gave her a cup of water and a plate full, a small plate of meat and rice. And obviously she was starving. She gobbled it down and drank the water, and she was, you know, dying, that, you know, no pun intended, to have something in her system.
Yeah.
And the guards are laughing the whole time, and she didn't pay attention. And then, you know, they continued to laugh. And then one of the guards said to her, "How was it?" And she responded, "You know, I was so hungry, I would have eaten anything." And they laughed and said, "You did?" And he said, and she said, "Well, what do you mean?" And they said, "Well, after we, you know, killed your husband and took your 1-year-old son, we basically chopped them up and cooked them, and you ate them." Now think about that, people. Whether it's true or not is kind of irrelevant. I tend to think it is true, because they do it all the time. They kill babies all the time.
Yeah, they do fucked up things.
Yeah, they do. But just the thought of that, and the second thing, I'll make briefer, but it was a man and woman who had 6 children. They were captured. They put the man in a cage, and in front of him, they raped his 5 daughters and his wife over a course of a day and a half. But in another room, they raped his youngest, who I think was 9. They raped her over a span of like 4 days. I think she was being raped like 8 hours a day consecutively by a group of men, and they basically killed her. They raped her to death, a 9-year-old little girl. And both the people on TV were sobbing uncontrollably because they lived it. So my point of this story is the evil that exists, but, and like Sal mentioned earlier about the good versus evil, that we are definitely in a real-time problem here. It's getting worse, not better. And when you hear people like this woman, I'll call her Margie. You know, when Margie is telling me that there's no, you know, Muslim terrorism, and that's all a made-up right-wing conspiracy,
then what the fuck is that?
Right? How can I have respect? How can you talk to this woman intelligently if that's what she says?
What does she call that then?
She wouldn't say.
What would she call that? That's just rape.
Well,
no, it's obviously something more.
Right. Well, every time I brought this up to her, she just changed the subject entirely and came back. Yeah. And we know I wasn't. Listen, she could say whatever she wants to me. I wasn't insulted.
Yeah, of course.
But she called me. It's a joke. She would come back and call me a name every time about my, you know, and you know, and then other people were jumping on the post, and blasting her. Well deserved, I may say. But that's what's going on. And there's something else that Sal talked about earlier, and about the caliphate, the whole map. And there's something that's never talked about, never addressed. And if we did, Sal and I don't give a shit, because I don't care if people call me racist. But if we ever did it in the modern media, and this is the truth, they'd probably be called a racist. But a big problem in Europe is the incredibly decreased birth rates.
I think that's a world problem.
It's a world problem, but in Europe, big time. Yeah. So I think what I'm told, and my number may be off, but I think I'm in the ballpark. But in order to sustain a healthy and viable civilization over a long period of time, we're not talking like 5 years. We're talking like 100 or so. You need to have a birth rate, I think, of 2.1 or higher.
Yeah, right now America is at 3.3, I think.
Yeah, you need that for a long time. Unfortunately, Europe is like the European countries are at 1.8.
So is Japan.
Well,
very low.
Yeah,
they're the
low.
lowest.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right. Yeah. And the only thing, Japan doesn't have an influx of people. It's only makes them. But so what happens is these individuals that are in the caliphate, like Sal, spoke of so eloquently earlier, they see this, and they see it as an opportunity to go in. And basically, if you watch the old, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken, the old Braveheart movie, which is one of my favorite of all times, the King of England says, and he called it something, and I'm gonna, if I can remember it, and he had a name for it, but I forgot. But he said, we're gonna go into Scotland and we're gonna breed them out, meaning that our men will rape and have sex and breed with their women, and that will make them English, and then they'll come over to the dark side, so to speak. Same exact theory. And here's the crazy part. If you look at the Muslim birth rates around the world, they're over 10.
10 people.
10.
10.
10.
The next closest is Jewish people.
Right.
And that's like 5.
Right. And think about who supports these people. The fucking idiots out there like Margie and the people of her kind who don't believe we have problems. But we cannot keep bringing these people over here. It's insanity. It's completely insane.
Well, we stopped it.
Exactly. Thank God we stopped it. And we're down to, and just to think, people, I read and I noticed her effects. Hillary Clinton wanted to bring in 2017 alone and increase it at a 20% clip every year. She wanted to bring in 650 650,000 Muslim refugees. Think of that insanity.
To all you liberal people too, in 2013, Hillary Clinton said gay people shouldn't be married.
Exactly.
2013. How many years ago was that?
Not too long ago.
17, 16, 15. Well, that was only 4 years ago.
Yeah, she said
her
that.
mind, her brain chemistry, and her mind changed that radically in 4 years, people, to where gay people.
Well, that's what got her elected.
Amazing.
She'll say whatever it takes to get her elected.
Whatever that is incredible. I need that fucking pill.
Yeah. That pill's called the power pill. The money pill.
Oh yeah.
But
maybe I don't want that pill.
Yeah, but this is the stuff going on, and there's other things that continue to happen that we're not we're not shocked over. Just constant flow of insane corruption, constant.
But I think people are waking up to it finally.
They are.
I mean, we didn't. I don't know how far along in the show we are here, but we didn't talk about fucking fat boy Chris Christie, governor of New Jersey. This piece of shit literally bankrupts the fucking state. Then he goes to his fucking home that is in one of the fucking places you're not even allowed to go.
Yeah.
And he goes on basically his own private beach. So what this looks like, he said all kinds of stupid shit in the media that made him sound even worse, but we already knew he was a fat fucking idiot. But anyway, he goes, it makes it just look like, to me personally, and I'm probably everybody else who has this like-minded opinion that I do, you close these fucking beaches down just so you could have your own private beach on 4th of July, you fat piece of fucking shit. I mean, I know it's not that petty, but that's what it comes off as. Like,
listen, it's, and I don't want to get into too many, geographical politics in Jersey, because I know the people outside don't really care. But real quick, what amazes me is our state, this state that called the Garden State, for those of you who don't know, because we have great tomatoes and some other really great stuff down here in South Jersey. But this state has been shit on for the last 35, 40 years. I think the last governor we had decent was Tom Kean, and I think he was back in the late 70s, early 80s. Since then, we've had every bum imaginable, and Chris Christie is no exception to that rule, unfortunately. But listen, we all have them. Look what's going on in New York with this idiot de Blasio. Look what's happening in California.
Illinois
is bankrupt. Exactly. And then Rahm Emanuel, I got to talk about this because I found it hysterical. Rahm Emanuel was calling, calling out how, criticizing New York and the subway system, which, duly noted, since de Blasio came in, things have gone to shit on cleanliness and that type of thing. However, Rahm Emanuel should not be throwing any, stones or bricks from the glass house he lives in the city called Chicago. That idiot, I mean, it's the murder capital of our country. That little shitty area of Chicago, Illinois, which I think is the South Side, is basically the murder capital of the world.
That's why they call it Chirac.
Exactly, Chirac. And he doesn't want to, and in the, his comments, he doesn't take one bit of responsibility, like Sal and I always talk about liberals and responsibility.
Ownership, man.
Zero. He blamed everything else. And I found it funny that, he's ragging on New York, and this jerk off de Blasio doesn't even stick up for his city that he represents, and he kowtows to this guy Rahm Emanuel, because in the power structure of the Democrats and liberals, you kowtow to the guy in front of you, no matter if he's right or wrong. And so he took it, he bent over and took it up the keister from Rahm Emanuel, who's a piece of shit anyway.
Yeah.
So wow. I found it to be funny.
Yeah, that is pretty funny. Fucking piece of shit. How are these people?
It's amazing to me that this is what goes on. And I mean, all week, every day, there's just more and more stuff coming out. And all I can say, and I want to talk to Sal about this, but two things. One, thank God Hillary Clinton is not our president. And the fact of the matter that 48 or 49% of our country can vote for her is completely alarming to me. I'm praying in my mind that maybe those, that week or 3 days that the election had occurred, that maybe there was some kind of, bug in the water or some kind of, oxygen that got into these people's houses that made them brain dead. But we'll talk about that another time. But the second thing is, I'd like to discuss, and we're going to probably hopefully get into this next week. And if we have a slow week in the news with liberal lunacy, we'll talk. But I just want to go through President Trump's accomplishments, and we're not going to list them, but he had some really great ones. And listen, look at the stock market, look at the unemployment rate, manufacturing. I can go on. And that was one of the things these two gentlemen today questioned me about. They said that President Trump has no accomplishments so far in 5 months. And then I combated them with all these information and facts.
Don't you remember our stock market was tanking?
Exactly.
Like I still have a problem with them just printing this money with no fucking gold backup or anything. It's just like we have no reserve. We have nothing. They just keep fucking printing money. Like, how does it not catch up with us? But somehow, some way.
I think there was a report that came out late Monday night that President Trump, and I love this shit. You never hear about it. It sickens me to my core. President Trump went down the line items for 1 day in the White House. 1 day. They said it was on his agenda for an hour. And he took the red pen. He just went, this, gone. This, gone. And I think in 1 day, on an hour's worth of work, he saved $229 million of American taxpayer money.
Fucking great.
Isn't it refreshing? Anyone, whether you like President Trump, dislike him, or have no feelings about him, isn't it refreshing that we have a person in there that's looking out for us? He's looking out, instead of someone who's pissing money away and wasting it and flushing it down the toilet, you have an actual person who's looking to save money.
Well, Michelle, we're going to start this government program for these babies that have just one bad toe.
Right. Yeah.
That bad toe, they'll be able to walk, but dear God, if they try to run, they're going to hurt a little.
Or if they fart too much in their sleep, something like cows farting, like. But these are
dumbest fucking subsidies.
This happens all the time, and he's cut them all. He's done so many good things, and then there's one other thing I want to mention, and this is going to tie back to the media. And if you want to wrap it up, if you have something else you want to think about,
no, I'm good.
But there was a great video. I have to talk about it because the if you looked at this video overall in a microcosm of our society, it had so many endearing qualities to it. And there was a group of children in high school out of Charlotte, North Carolina, and they happened to be all African American. And President Trump, they were at the White House, and you saw President Trump in his seat, and he had all these students standing behind him, and he starts talking about how great Charlotte, North Carolina is, the great state of North Carolina, great city of Charlotte, these great amazing students. And then he goes and proceeds to tell them that they won the rocket contest. They beat out 900 other schools, and they are going to the World Rocket Challenge, and that competes against Japan, China, all these other countries.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so he asks the students, what is the name of the rocket? What did you call it? And the one kid kind of stood up and said, we called the rocket Trump. And he goes, and he joked around and he said, well, number one, gentlemen, if you named it Trump, obviously it worked very well and worked hard. And they laughed. And he said, yeah. He goes, but why is the reason you called it the rocket Trump? And he goes, and he looked right. It was kind of interesting. It was this taller, skinny black kid. And he kind of leaned over because he was standing directly behind President Trump. And if you watch, which I can't do, President Trump kind of leaned back, and the young man kind of leaned in, so they were face to face. And he said, "We called it Trump because this rocket's impossible to stop."
Woo, boy!
And I was like, "Wow!" And it was weird. President Trump just looked up at him and gave him a high five.
That's great.
And it was fantastic. And it was, when you hear about all this stuff about President Trump not acting presidential, tweeting, which I don't give a shit about. Like, I won't go into it.
We don't have to get into it.
Yeah, Sal talked about it earlier, and he was, he nailed it. Or, what he said against Mika and Joe Scarborough is comical. I could give a flying rat's ass what their thoughts are on him. But I sit here and say presidential. What he just did with those African-American students was completely presidential, and it was ignored. I didn't see it anywhere. If someone out there saw it on CNN, CNBC, please let me call and tell me I'm wrong, because I didn't hear about it in any newspaper. I did see it on Fox, but it was brief. But I saw it on my news feed, on C-SPAN. So that's where we always talk about that. Secondarily, the same people that we're talking about that would say Trump wasn't acting presidential, they're the same ones who voted for Bill Clinton, and they're the same ones who, let's call a spade, no pun intended. President Trump was grabbing a cigar, jamming it up the snatches of one of his interns in the White House, which, for any one of us having sex with a coworker, or even worse, someone that you oversee, someone that reports to you, someone that you may have to give some type of criticism or review on, will get you fired. But as a president, he did it. He got in trouble for it, so to speak, got impeached. But these same people will say, oh, but Trump was, not acting presidential, but they'll say nothing about Bill Clinton, which just reeks in liberal hypocrisy.
Yeah. That, and we can end on Bernie Sanders' wife is going to fucking jail.
Yep. Yeah. and you know what? That will give, and that was the caveat to the discussion with these two guys today is Bernie Sanders. And
I knew it. I didn't even have to talk to you about it.
They were getting their information from Snopes. Now, people.
Oh, God.
Real quick, and then we're gonna head out, and then Sal's gonna tell you who we're gonna leave this podcast with. But Snopes, for you people that don't believe me, go online. The co-founder of Snopes is an Italian woman, pretty young. I think she might be in her late 30s. She was out in a bar one night in DC, got rip-roaring drunk, and basically on camera, she didn't know who she was talking to because she was too fucked up. Laughed and said, "Yeah, listen. Whenever we get a conservative story, we basically lie and change all the facts for when it goes into our, our wiki-like Snopes.com fact check. But however, whenever we get a liberal point of view or a Democratic point of view, we always spin it to make it look favorable to the party that we decide to support, and everyone in our news organization contributes and believes in. If that doesn't tell you, shit, you don't know what you're talking about."
I'll give you a little backstory on Snopes too. It was started by a man and a man-wife combination. The wife, like we were talking about, the man ended up leaving his wife
Yep.
cheating on her and doing all kinds. These are the fucking no one is sacred, people. This is what I'm trying to like. This is my point. Like, you're getting your information from two fuck ups. Like,
yeah,
it's Snopes, not us.
Yeah. Right.
Like, all they did was start a website. I mean, you want to call it InfoWars, Alex Jones.
Right.
It's the same shit. It is the same shit, just on the left side. Like, it's all it is.
But I have people taking that as Bible. These two individuals
I know
are
people
talking
that
as
take
Bible.
InfoWars as Bible.
Right.
It's like,
And now,
slow down.
Yeah, I don't do that either.
Slow down.
Right. Exactly. So hopefully this week will be calmer.
I mean, I don't know if it'll ever get calmer.
Probably not. Probably not.
The tide has shifted.
The tide has shifted, but I think a blessing. Let's wrap up this telecast before Sal puts on some tunes. Yeah. You know, great tune. But let's wrap this up. And we're gonna, on this 4th of July Let Freedom Ring special, we're gonna put a little silver lining in you know, the ocean of dismay, the cesspool of corruption, as we call it. But
it's great work.
Yeah, I think what we have to look forward to is, like Sal spoke of, I think the tide is changing. I think people in America, not all of them obviously, but a lot, are waking up. The one thing that I can say, and prove me wrong, I know Sal agrees with me, is name one thing that President Donald J. Trump has said that has not come to fruition. That guy has been, I'm going to tell you something. I said it once. I'm going to say it again. If you remember back in the 1927 Yankees, when Babe Ruth put his bat out into right field, when Joe Willie Namath said, we're going to, you know, in Super Bowl in '69, when he said we're going to beat the Colts, Donald Trump has dwarfed both those guys on predictions. That guy is about 6-0 right now. He's been right from when he first said, like we discussed earlier, he was going to be president. Everybody laughed at him. Laughed. First off, they laughed when he said he was going to win the primary. Then they said they when he won the primary, he was never going to win. You know, so this, and then after he got elected, he's been right on every single claim he has made. Everyone.
Dude's the man.
He's the man.
Fucking man.
And I love him. And I'm going to tell you something. We talked about it. One more thing, and then Sal's.
You keep talking all you want.
Donald J. Trump. You know what I love most about him? He's one of us. He's Sal. He's me.
Yeah, maybe not a billionaire yet, but he's still a man, just like us.
I'm talking about his. Obviously, we're not talking. We're talking about his actions.
Yes,
he's not just me. Everybody on my Facebook, you know, any of the deplorables we talk to, I could list about 20 off the top of my head, 20 guys, 20 women, and more, hundreds that think like we do, and they don't have to come from New Jersey. I know. No, of course not. Trump comes from Queens. Yeah, I believe.
Yeah, New
Yorker. Hardworking, and even though he always wasn't a rich man, his father wasn't always a wealthy man. I mean, if you listen to his interviews and you'll read his story, not just corroborated by him, but the guys who were on his dad's you know, construction sites, is when, you know, Donald J. Trump was 12 years old during the summer. He was coming to work at 5:30 with his dad every single day, learning the business.
The dude has work ethic.
Work ethic, like nobody's business.
No fucking president has had
exactly
in a long time.
So what's so wrong with that? And then yes, he got money, and
that's what's great about it.
He got money.
The media couldn't buy this guy.
Yep.
Like, listen, Soros, he's got you covered.
Yep.
You just do what we say, and you'll be good.
Yeah,
you'll be good, man. Everything will go great. You'll be the most beloved president in the world ever.
Yep.
Just go along with, like, just take Soros's money.
Yep.
I'm just saying.
Yeah,
Soros.
no, you're right.
I'm just saying that. Just
Bilderbergs, whatever.
Whatever. Yeah. Just take the money.
Yep.
Take the money. Play along. You'll be the best ever. I guarantee it. You'll be better than Obama.
Right.
And he was like, "Fuck that."
Yeah, I don't want that.
I don't want. I actually, you know what? I want to be known as a good president for the right fucking reasons.
Exactly. And he he took $1 million investment, and I know that's a lot of money, people. It is for anybody.
But to make billions.
2.2 billion. Do the math.
People don't. They
don't get that.
No, they failed to see. They're like, oh, what's $1 billion compared to $1 million? It is $1 billion compared to $1 million is almost 10 times.
Would you
incredible.
equate somebody starting? I know this might sound stupid. Would you equate to, like, in our times, maybe somebody starting a business for $100 and building it to like 22 million? Would that be?
Oh, that's like you start your LLC, like you told me I should do for $100, and then you cash out with a fucking 100 million.
That's exactly what he did.
Yeah, that's exactly what he did.
I mean, he did on a different scale, but it's nothing to sneeze at. It's a huge accomplishment. And my point before we go is, what I love about him is he's a guy who don't take shit. Who doesn't want that? I love when people say, "Oh, it's not." No,
No one's walking over us.
Nobody, man. He is just like me and my boys. You know, even like not to sound like it's a man woman thing, because there's a lot of women out there, including my wife, who kick ass on Facebook every day. You guys are the cream of the crop out there. You know when you're in a debate, and what I love is you guys have my back, especially my wife. When I have to argue with a woman, I only can act so cavalier in my attitude. I have to keep a level of modicum because she's female to a certain. I can't abuse her. I can't call her any names. Men, I'll go right out and rip your head off, and that's completely legit. Yeah. But what happens is a lot of the women on my Facebook come to my aid, and I thank you all. There's too many of you to count. And obviously my wife, who is one of the most sharpest, most intelligent women I've ever met, writes like a banshee, an incredible writer, so persuasive, so intelligent, so informed, and she will dress you down and make you look stupid.
Oh yeah.
Very, very quickly. She does it on a daily basis. And so with that being said, I just love the fact that President Trump is the same way. He don't listen, why would you want a man? And I'm not saying man or woman, but since he's a man, obviously, why would you want a man who allows people to shit on his kids? Would you want that? You know, talk about an 11-year-old boy. Is that your son? How would you like that? How would you like if what's usually in the past was off limits to talk about anyone's children in the White House? It has been off limits. It happened very rarely. I know people are going to say, oh, Barack Obama's kids didn't have shit said about them. They didn't have shit, and they gave us good ammunition. George W. Bush's kids were talked about once. I think when the two daughters turned 18. She did coke or something. Yeah, she went out and partied or something. They mentioned it and kind of ragged her, but she was 18. Yeah. Here we have a boy. Yeah, we have a boy who's 11. He's a child. He's playing with, still playing with Batman and Legos, Batman and Superman figures. And the left wing, Hollywood, the media would you want a man to keep his mouth shut? No. Fuck no. You make fun of my 11-year-old, you're lucky you don't get a fucking beating. Never mind, attack back on Twitter. Yeah. But he does. Make fun of his wife. That's an honorable man that he sticks up for her. Makes fun of his deplorables. These are the people that support him and voted him in. Sticks right up for him. And also calls out hypocrisy and political correctness.
Oh, he's a man that knows where his bread is buttered.
Exactly.
He knows that.
Exactly. Sure. Exactly. So with that being said, people, thank you for joining us. We enjoyed the 4th of July special, Left Freedom Ring. I hope everyone had a wonderful night tonight. For those of you going out to watch the fireworks, remember, this is what it's all about right here. It's all about the red, white, and blue. All
right, buddy. This is a good show.
Excellent show.
We're going to go out on a song. It's called You Can't Get Nothing Over Us. And that's the theme. That's just the theme of our life right now. You can't get nothing over me, baby. Thanks, everybody.
All right, have a wonderful evening.
Have a great day.
Happy 4th of July. Enjoy. For all the great women and men out in our military, thank you.
Pretty good.
Yeah, how long were you?
Oh, I don't know. We got some good music.
Yeah. Let's see how long you were.